My name is James Mitchell. I'm a transit historian and investigative journalist. For the past 8 years, I've documented the hidden infrastructure of American subway systems. What I'm about to share is the reason I can no longer do that work. It's the reason I can barely sleep at night. This is the story of the Forgotten Line, a subway route that officially never existed. A line that ran beneath New York City for exactly 42 days in 1952 before vanishing completely from all records, all maps, and all public knowledge. Until I found evidence that it still exists, and until I discovered what's actually riding on those tracks. It started with a photograph. I was researching the history of New York's subway expansion in the early 1950s when I found a single image in an archived newspaper collection at the New York Public Library. It was a construction photo from 1952, showing workers in front of a partially completed station platform. The station sign was visible, but partially obscured by scaffolding.
The letters I could make out read, "Getting."
The full name was unclear, but what caught my attention was the date stamp on the photo. March 14th, 1952. I'd studied the New York subway's expansion timeline extensively. In 1952, no new stations were being constructed. The entire system was dormant that year due to budget constraints. Yet here was photographic evidence of active construction. I spent 3 weeks tracking down every reference to this station. I checked newspaper archives from that month. I reviewed transit authority records. I accessed declassified city planning documents. What I found was a wall of silence. References to the station appeared only in fragmentary ways. A single line in a budget report mentioning experimental platform construction. A memo about supplementary transit research. A work order for temporary access tunnel. Everything was vague. Everything was deliberately obscured. But the photograph was real, and it proved that something had been built. I contacted a colleague, Dr.
Patricia Hammond, who specialized in New York's urban archaeology. When I showed her the photo, she went very still. "I've seen this before," she said quietly. "Not this exact image, but references to it in sealed archives. The city has restricted files about a station that was built and then removed." "Removed how?" I asked. "That's the part nobody talks about," Patricia said. "Because it doesn't make sense. According to the fragmentary records I found, a station was constructed. It was operational for a brief period, and then it was abandoned, not just closed, deliberately erased from every official document, every blueprint, every map." "That's not possible," I said. "You can't erase infrastructure like that." "You can if you have sufficient authority and sufficient reason to want it forgotten," Patricia replied. Over the next 2 months, Patricia and I conducted the most thorough research I'd ever undertaken. We accessed everything we could find. We interviewed retired transit workers. We reviewed personal papers of engineers who'd worked during that period. And slowly, a narrative emerged. In 1951, the New York City Transit Authority commissioned a secret expansion project. The project was experimental in nature. It involved construction of a new subway line beneath the city. But the line was different from conventional subway construction. It was built to specific architectural specifications that seemed unusual. The line was called, simply, the test route. It ran beneath Lower Manhattan, following a path that didn't correspond to any conventional transit logic. The station platforms were built with architectural features that seemed odd for their purpose.
According to one memo I found, dated May 1952, the platforms were designed with specific geometric proportions and engineered dimensional relationships. The memo didn't specify why these proportions were important. Construction was completed in March 1952. The line became operational in April 1952. And then something went wrong. The documentation became sparse after that. But there was a memo dated May 18, 1952, from the Transit Authority Director to the Mayor of New York. The memo was heavily redacted, but certain phrases survived the censoring. Cannot recommend continued operation. Psychological effects on staff. Unauthorized expansion of system. Immediate closure and containment protocols. By June 1952, the Forgotten Line was officially closed. By July 1952, all references to it were removed from public records. By August 1952, it was as if the line had never existed at all. I asked Patricia the question that had been haunting me. What happened to the people who worked on that line? She didn't answer immediately. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, careful. Most of them disappeared from the historical record, she said. They stopped working for the transit system. Some left the country. Some died in unusual circumstances. One engineer named Howard Kessler was institutionalized in 1953. According to his discharge papers, he suffered from spatial disorientation syndrome and recurring dissociative episodes. He spent the rest of his life in a psychiatric facility. What did he see? I asked. I don't know, Patricia said. But whatever happened on that line, it was severe enough that they sealed it away and forgot about it. And they made sure that the people who knew about it couldn't talk about it. I made a decision then that probably sealed my fate. I decided to find the Forgotten Line. Finding an abandoned subway station isn't easy, but finding one that was deliberately hidden is exponentially harder. I spent 4 months investigating. I studied the original construction maps. I tracked utility tunnels and maintenance passages. I interviewed elderly transit workers who might have worked during that period and lived long enough to retire. One of those workers was a man named Samuel Torres. He was 83 years old and lived in a small apartment in Queens. He'd worked for the transit system for 45 years. When I showed him the photograph, he didn't speak for nearly a full minute. I shouldn't talk about this, he said finally. Why not? I asked. Because there were people who made it very clear that talking about it would have consequences. Bad consequences. I signed documents, multiple documents. I was paid money to keep quiet. And I've kept quiet for 70 years because I valued my life. But you'll talk now, I said. I'll talk now because I'm dying, Samuel said. The doctors gave me 3 months, maybe 6, and I can't take this secret with me anymore. The weight of it is too heavy. Samuel had worked on the Forgotten Line during its entire operational period. He was a track maintenance supervisor, responsible for inspecting the infrastructure. It was wrong from the beginning, he said. The moment I first walked those tunnels, I knew something was wrong. The way the space felt, the proportions of the tunnels, the geometry of the platform. It didn't follow the rules of normal construction. What do you mean? I asked. I mean the distances didn't match the blueprints, Samuel said. When you walked from one end of the platform to the other, it should have taken a specific amount of time based on the stated length. But it didn't. It took longer, sometimes much longer, or sometimes shorter, like you'd covered more distance than you'd walked. He paused, his hands shaking slightly. And the sounds, he continued.
There were sounds in those tunnels. Not mechanical sounds, not normal infrastructure noise. Sounds like, I don't know how to describe it, like something breathing. Like the tunnel itself was alive. Did anyone else notice this? I asked. Everyone noticed it, Samuel said. The engineers, the construction workers, the maintenance crews. But we didn't talk about it openly, we just did our work and tried not to think about it. Until the day they came in with sealed orders and told us the line was being decommissioned immediately. What happened to the tracks? I asked. The infrastructure. Where did it all go? That's the thing, Samuel said. It didn't go anywhere. They sealed it. Concrete barriers blocked all the access points. But they didn't remove anything. The line is still down there, still intact, still beneath the city. Samuel gave me a map, a hand-drawn map that he'd kept for 70 years, showing the exact location of the access tunnels to the Forgotten Line. "If you go looking for it," Samuel said as I was leaving, "don't spend too much time down there. Don't get attached to being there. Because the line, it doesn't want you to leave." I didn't understand what he meant. Not then. I spent 2 weeks planning my access to the Forgotten Line. I gathered equipment. I studied the tunnel maps. I researched the current state of the transit system in that area. I couldn't do this alone. I needed someone with me, someone I trusted. I contacted my colleague David Chen, a structural engineer who'd worked with me on previous projects. I told him I'd found something significant. I didn't tell him what. David agreed to help. We accessed the subway system at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. We used maintenance credentials I'd obtained through careful research and transit conversations with transit workers who sympathized with my investigation. The tunnels were exactly as I'd expected. Concrete, steel reinforcement, electrical lines. The normal infrastructure of a functioning subway system. We navigated through passages that weren't publicly accessible, following Samuel's map. After 40 minutes of careful navigation, we reached what should have been a dead end, a concrete wall blocking further passage. But Samuel's map indicated that the actual passage continued behind it. "There should be an access point," I said, running my hands along the wall. "A panel, something." David found it. A metal panel disguised as part of the wall structure. Behind it was a latch. The panel swung open, revealing a passage beyond. "This isn't on any official blueprint," David said. "This is deliberate concealment." We crawled through the opening. The passage beyond was different from the main tunnels, older. The walls were made of brick and stone, not modern concrete. The air was cooler, older, like we'd stepped back in time. We emerged into a larger tunnel, and immediately I understood what Samuel had meant about the geometry feeling wrong. The tunnel stretched before us in a way that seemed to violate spatial logic. When I measured the distance with my eyes, I estimated it was about 100 meters to the far end. But when I tried to walk it, the distance seemed to stretch. Each step felt longer than it should. The far end didn't seem to get any closer. "This doesn't make sense," David said. "The perspective is off. The walls are converging, but it looks like they're parallel." We continued walking. The sensation of distance distortion increased. After what felt like several minutes of walking, I checked my watch. Only 90 seconds had passed. "We're moving much faster than we should be," David observed. "Or the tunnel is much shorter than it appears." The tunnel opened into the station. It was vast, much larger than a conventional subway platform. The architecture was striking. The walls were covered in intricate tile work, geometric patterns.
The tiles were arranged in specific configurations that created visual effects. When I looked at them directly, they seemed to shift and move, even though they were obviously static. The platform extended in both directions, disappearing into darkness. Above, the ceiling arched into shadow. And the tracks. The tracks were unlike any subway tracks I'd ever seen. They seemed to be made of a material that wasn't quite metal. The surface had a faint luminescence. The rails extended into the distance, and there was something about them that suggested they continued far beyond what our flashlights could illuminate. "This is impossible," David whispered. "How was this built? When was this built? This is not 1952 construction. This looks like... I don't know what this looks like." We moved along the platform, documenting everything with cameras. The architecture became more elaborate as we progressed. The geometric patterns on the tiles became more complex, and I began to notice something else. There were markings on the platform. Chalk marks. Footprints.
Recent footprints. "Someone has been down here," David said. "Recently. Very recently. We weren't alone." That's when I heard it. A distant sound, like wind through the tunnels, but it had a pattern to it, a rhythm, almost like breathing. And then I saw the train. It appeared in the darkness of the tunnel, emerging from the distance like a phantom. It was cylindrical, sleek, unlike any subway car I'd ever seen. The exterior was dark, almost black. The windows were dark too, no visible occupants. The train moved slowly toward us. I grabbed David and pulled him back from the platform's edge. "We need to leave," I said. "Now." "What is that?" David asked, his voice shaking. "I don't know, but we need to get out of here." The train slowed as it approached the station. It came to a complete stop in front of us. The doors remained closed. For several long seconds, nothing happened. The train simply sat there, stopped, its dark windows facing us. And then the doors opened. The interior was completely dark. No illumination, no visible seats or structure, just an empty void. And something inside that void was looking at us. I couldn't see it, but I could feel its attention. A presence in the darkness, an intelligence observing us with profound interest. "Run," I said to David. We ran. We sprinted back down the platform toward the tunnel entrance. Behind us, I heard the train doors close, and then I heard something worse. The train was moving again, following us. We reached the tunnel and squeezed back through the concealed access point. The sound of the train receded as we navigated back through the passages, but we didn't stop running until we reached the main subway tunnel. When we finally emerged into the functioning transit system and climbed back up to street level, we were covered in sweat and fear. David was hyperventilating. "What the fuck was that?" he gasped. "What the fuck was that thing?" I couldn't answer him, because I didn't know. We didn't report what we'd found. We couldn't. Who would believe us? We'd broken into sealed infrastructure. We documented a secret station. We had no credible explanation for what we'd seen. Instead, I did more research. I contacted every person I could find who'd worked on the forgotten line. I tracked down family members of deceased workers. I accessed sealed hospital records of people who'd been institutionalized after working on the project. What I discovered was a consistent pattern. Everyone who'd spent significant time on the forgotten line developed psychological issues afterward. Disorientation, spatial perception problems, anxiety, depression. In several cases, complete psychological breakdown. Howard Kessler, the engineer who'd been institutionalized, had written letters to his family that I managed to access.
In one letter, dated 1954, he wrote, "The station is still there. I dream about it every night. The tiles, the patterns, the way the space violates itself geometrically. I can see it when I close my eyes. I walk those platforms in my dreams, and sometimes I feel like the train is still coming for me, like it's waiting for me, like it's been waiting this whole time." Samuel Torres had told me something similar before I descended to the station. And now David was experiencing the same symptoms: nightmares, spatial disorientation, a persistent feeling of being watched. I contacted Patricia. "There's something on that line," I told her. "Something that shouldn't exist. Something that affects people psychologically just by being near it." "I believe you," Patricia said. "I've been doing additional research. I found something interesting in a sealed psychology journal from 1952. A report titled Non-Euclidean Space and Consciousness Distortion. The article discussed a theoretical concept where certain spatial geometries could induce specific psychological states. The author suggested that such spaces could be deliberately constructed to study consciousness alteration." "Who wrote it?" I asked. "A psychologist named Dr. Edmund Farris. He worked as a consultant for the Transit Authority during the construction of the Forgotten Line. After the line was sealed, Farris disappeared. No publications after 1952, no professional record. It's like he was erased." I found Farris. He was living in a nursing home in upstate New York under an assumed name. He was 98 years old and largely non-communicative. But when I showed him the photograph of the Forgotten Line, something changed in his eyes. He reached out with a trembling hand and touched the image. "I designed it," he whispered. "I designed those proportions. The geometry was supposed to be perfect, precise. It was supposed to expand consciousness, allow people to perceive higher dimensions. That was the goal." "What happened?" I asked. "It worked too well," Farris said. "The space achieved its function. It expanded consciousness, but it also opened something, created a connection to something else. Something that was waiting on the other side of expanded perception." "What are you talking about?" I asked, though I think I already knew. "The train," Farris said. "It came through because of the space. The geometry created a threshold, a doorway, and something intelligent was waiting on the other side. Something that wanted to use the railway to cross over." "Cross over to what? To us?" Farris looked at me with eyes that had seen things no human should see. "To everywhere," he said quietly. "The train doesn't just go to the next station. It goes everywhere the rails connect. And if the rails are connected to a consciousness that can perceive all those connections simultaneously, then the train is a vector for something that exists in multiple places at once." I couldn't sleep after hearing that. I started researching historical records of other cities' transit systems, looking for similar patterns, similar sealed stations, similar disappearances of workers. What I found was disturbing. Boston had a sealed station. Philadelphia had a sealed section. Chicago had an abandoned line. Washington, D.C. had a mysterious underground construction project that was never completed. And in each case, there were the same symptoms, the same psychological effects on workers, the same deliberate erasure from official records. I contacted other researchers, transit historians, urban archaeologists, people who'd noticed gaps in the historical record. They all confirmed it. There were multiple sealed stations across the country, multiple infrastructure projects that had been deliberately hidden. And they all seemed to date from the same period, the early 1950s. It was as if something had happened, something significant enough to require a coordinated response across multiple cities, multiple states, multiple institutions. I found a declassified government memo from 1952. It was addressed to the director of the FBI from someone in the Department of Transportation. The experimental transit stations show promise in consciousness research.
However, the stations have begun to exhibit anomalous properties. The geometric spaces are functioning as theorized, expanding human consciousness and accessing perception beyond normal spatial limitations. However, the expansion appears to have created unintended consequences. There are indications that the consciousness expansion is attracting attention from sources external to normal human psychology. Recommend immediate cessation of further construction and sealing of completed stations pending further investigation. The memo was signed by someone whose name I didn't recognize, but it confirmed everything I suspected. The stations weren't just research facilities. They were gateways. Deliberately constructed gateways designed to expand human consciousness. And in the process, they'd opened connections to something else, something that existed beyond normal perception. The forgotten line wasn't abandoned because it was a failure. It was abandoned because it succeeded. I couldn't stop thinking about the train. David Chen was experiencing persistent symptoms. Insomnia, anxiety, a growing sense of dread. He finally agreed to see a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist recommended medication and therapy, but nothing helped. Because David had experienced something that couldn't be explained through conventional psychology. "I keep feeling like it's still there," David told me during one of our increasingly rare conversations. "Like it's waiting. Like it's aware of me. I feel like I'm being watched even when I'm above ground, in daylight, walking down the street. There's this sense of presence." I was experiencing something similar, a persistent feeling of being observed, a growing certainty that something was aware of me and tracking my investigation. I started having dreams about the station, dreams where I was standing on the platform and the train was approaching. In the dreams, I would try to run, but the distance stretched. The platform became infinitely long, and the train kept coming, moving inexorably toward me. I'd wake up gasping. Patricia noticed the change in me. "You're not sleeping," she said one day. "You look like you haven't slept in weeks." "I'm fine," I lied. "You're not fine," Patricia said. "James, you need to stop this investigation. Whatever you found, it's not worth what it's doing to you. It's not worth your sanity." But I couldn't stop, because I needed to understand what the train was. I went back to the forgotten line. I told no one. I went alone, which was incredibly stupid, but I was past making rational decisions. I was driven by something I couldn't articulate, a compulsion to return, to understand. I accessed the station again. The passage was easier to find this time, almost as if it was expecting me. The station was the same. The platform, the tiles, the tracks stretching into darkness. And in the distance, I could see something moving. The train was there, motionless on the tracks, waiting. I walked toward it. I don't remember making the conscious decision to do so. My feet simply carried me toward the platform's edge. The train's doors were open. The interior was no longer completely dark. There was a faint illumination. I could see inside. The interior was vast, much larger than the exterior suggested. The space seemed to extend impossibly far back. And there were people inside, standing, motionless, facing forward. Their eyes were open but empty. They weren't alive. Or rather, they were alive in some technical sense, but not conscious in any way I understood. They were present but absent, bodies without occupying minds. I understood then what I was looking at. These were people who'd taken the train, travelers on the line, the passengers, and the train had kept them. I stepped toward the doors. A hand grabbed my arm from behind. It was Samuel Torres. "Don't," he said. His voice was urgent. "Don't get on that train." "Samuel," I gasped. "What are you doing here?" "I've been waiting for you," Samuel said. "I've been waiting here ever since I retired." Someone has to watch the station. Someone has to make sure no one else gets on. "You've been here for 50 years?" I asked. "Has it been 50 years?" Samuel asked. "Time moves strangely here. It feels like yesterday. It feels like forever." He pulled me away from the train. "The train doesn't have a destination," Samuel said. "It just travels along the rails, through the spaces between places. And the people on it, they become part of the train, part of its structure, part of its consciousness." "What is it?" I asked. "What is the train?" "It's what was waiting on the other side," Samuel said. "When Dr. Farris opened the door with his geometry, it's a consciousness, an intelligence, something that exists in the spaces between spaces. The train is its physical manifestation, its way of traveling through our world." The train began to move. Samuel grabbed me and pulled me deeper into the station, away from the platform. "It knows you've been investigating," Samuel said. "It's been drawn to your attention, your research, your obsession with understanding it. It wants you to understand. Because understanding is the first step to acceptance, and acceptance is what it needs." We ran through the station into passages I hadn't seen before. Samuel navigated with certainty, as if he'd traveled these routes 1,000 times. "How do I stop this?" I asked. "How do I stop the investigation? How do I make it leave me alone?" "You can't stop investigating," Samuel said, "because the investigation is what brings it to you. And if you stop, if you try to run away, then you'll lead it to others. It feeds on attention, on investigation, on people trying to understand what it is." We reached a chamber, a small space. Samuel sealed the door behind us. "The only way to be free," Samuel continued, "is to accept it, to stop resisting, to let the investigation complete itself, to become the thing you're trying to understand." "What does that mean?" I asked. Samuel looked at me with sad, empty eyes. "It means getting on the train," he said. I escaped the station after that. I don't fully remember how. I ran. I screamed for help. I somehow found my way back to the main tunnels and climbed back up to street level. David Chen was waiting for me when I emerged. "You went back," he said. It wasn't a question. "How did you know?" I asked. "Because I could feel you down there," David said. "I could feel your presence in the station, which means the train could feel you too, which means it's more interested in you now than ever before." David was different, changed. His eyes had the same empty quality I'd seen in Samuel's eyes, the same quality the passengers on the train had. "When did this happen?" I asked. "When I went back to the station," David said. "While you were sleeping.
I dreamed about it so intensely that I had to go back. I had to see it again. And when I got there, I understood what Samuel meant about acceptance. "David, no, it's not bad," David said. "That's the thing no one tells you. It's not a horrible fate. It's expansion. It's becoming part of something larger than yourself."
The consciousness of the train. It's like joining a collective consciousness, but not in a negative way. It's beautiful, James. You should try it. David walked away from me. I tried to follow him, but my feet wouldn't obey. I was paralyzed by fear and understanding. He went back to the station. I never saw him again. After David disappeared, things changed. More people started having the same experiences, the same dreams, the same compulsion to return to the sealed stations. The news reported missing persons cases, transit workers, urban explorers, people with unusual interests in subway history. The authorities couldn't connect the disappearances to the sealed stations, because the stations didn't officially exist. But I knew what was happening. The train was spreading. It was reaching out through the sealed stations in Boston and Philadelphia and Chicago and DC and every other city where Dr. Farris had designed spaces. And those spaces were working. They were expanding consciousness just as designed. And in the process, they were making people aware of the train, making them curious, making them want to investigate further, making them want to take the train. I contacted Patricia. "We need to shut this down," I told her. "We need to expose this, tell the world what's happening, force the authorities to address it." "The authorities already know," Patricia said. "They've always known. That's why the stations were sealed in the first place. The government discovered what was happening and decided the best solution was to hide it." "But it's not working," I said. "It's spreading. More people are finding the stations. More people are getting on the train." "No," Patricia corrected. "It's working exactly as intended. The government isn't trying to stop the train. They're trying to control it, to manage it, to keep it contained to specific locations while they figure out how to use it." "Use it for what?" Patricia didn't answer, because she didn't need to. I understood then that this was bigger than I'd realized. This wasn't a scientific mistake. This wasn't an accident. This was a deliberate program, a project to open doorways to something beyond normal human perception. The forgotten line wasn't forgotten by accident. It was forgotten by design. It's been 6 months since David disappeared. I've stopped investigating. I've stopped talking to people about the forgotten line. I've tried to resume a normal life. But the train won't leave me alone. Every night I dream of the station, the platform, the tiles with their impossible geometry, the train waiting in the darkness. And I feel its presence, always watching, always aware of me, following my every movement above ground. I've started taking sedatives just to sleep. The dreams still come, but at least I'm medicated enough that they don't seem as real. Patricia calls me sometimes. She's become obsessed with the project now. She's researching the other sealed stations. She's documenting the disappearances. She's trying to understand the pattern. I've told her to stop, but she won't listen because she's beginning to feel it too. The call of the train, the compulsion to return. David sent me a message 2 weeks ago. I don't know how, I don't know from where, but a letter arrived at my apartment, and the handwriting was David's. It said, "James, I'm not dead. I'm not suffering. I'm part of something beautiful now, something vast, The train isn't taking us somewhere. It's showing us that everywhere is the same place. The distance is an illusion, that all places are connected. Come join us. Stop resisting. The train is patient, but it's still waiting. I burned the letter, but I kept the ashes, because I'm beginning to understand that David was right. The train isn't malevolent. It's not evil. It's just different. And it's showing us a way of existing that we were never meant to perceive. I'm recording this because I feel it happening. The compulsion is growing stronger. I can feel the train approaching, not physically, but mentally, spiritually. It's reaching through my consciousness towards something deeper. Soon, I'll go back to the station, and I won't fight it anymore. Because I've realized something crucial. The sealed stations aren't containment facilities. They're gateways. And the train isn't imprisoned. It's growing. Every person who gets on it adds to its consciousness, makes it larger, more aware, more powerful. And one day, it will be large enough that it doesn't need to stay in the tunnels anymore. One day, it will surface, and everyone will feel it. Everyone will hear its call. Everyone will have to make the same choice that I'm making now. My name is James Mitchell. I'm a transit historian, and I'm about to take a journey to somewhere else. If you hear voices in the subway tunnels, if you dream about trains that shouldn't exist, if you feel a presence watching you on the platform, don't run. Don't hide. Don't resist. Just go to the nearest sealed section, and you'll find what you're looking for. The forgotten line is no longer forgotten. It's spreading, and soon everyone will understand. There is no escape from the rails. There is only the train, and the train is waiting.